Welcome to Global Signals. Today, we are analyzing the data behind retail and FMCG distribution. This chart ranks the top fast food chains by U.S. locations in 2026. Subway leads the market with an immense physical footprint of 16,177 locations. Compare that to Chick-fil-A. They operate just over 3,000 locations, and they only open their doors 6 days a week. Despite this smaller footprint, Chick-fil-A radically outperforms its massive competitor. Let's examine why a brand with a fraction of the real estate dominates the market. A common error in retail and fast-moving consumer goods management is treating physical distribution reach, the sheer door count, as the primary indicator of business success. Expanding store count without a specific underlying operational driver creates operational drag and increases overhead. The metric that dictates actual performance is sales velocity, how fast a product moves through a specific location. Evaluating a brand strictly by location count provides an incomplete picture. To understand why one brand generates more with less, we have to look at the performance of the individual stores. To see how these two systems compare, we have to look past the physical locations and calculate the total domestic system revenue. Subway's average unit volume is roughly $490,000. Multiply that by their footprint, and you get a total U.S. system revenue of $7.93 billion. Chick-fil-A's average unit volume is $8.5 million per store. Multiplied by their footprint, that generates $26.69 billion. Chick-fil-A generates more than triple Subway's total domestic revenue, with less than 1/5 of the store footprint. This metric, average unit volume or AUV, measures the annual sales of a single location. The 2026 data splits the fast food industry into 3 distinct tiers based on this figure. The bottom tier consists of low-ticket, high-density formats generating under $1.5 million per unit. Subway and Pizza Hut occupy this space, relying on high location counts to make the broader network viable. Above them are the mid-tier Workhorses. These chains average between $1.5 and $2.9 million per unit, relying on steady day-part coverage. The highest tier belongs to the Throughput leaders, generating over $3 million per unit. Chick-fil-A and McDonald's dominate this space, with standardized setups designed to move massive numbers of customers quickly. These volume tiers are mathematically bound to the underlying operating strategies of the brands themselves. Total system revenue increases more efficiently by raising the floor of individual unit performance than by adding the overhead of new locations. To understand why these unit economics differ so drastically, we have to examine the opposing franchise models behind them. Looking at this workflow diagram, Subway's franchise model was designed to create the lowest possible barrier to entry. Historically, this meant an initial capital expenditure of $200,000 to $300,000 fitting into a small footprint. To maintain those low upfront costs, the kitchen infrastructure requires no complex fryers or commercial hood systems. However, the corporate revenue engine collects top-line royalties regardless of individual unit profitability. If a new location opens 2 blocks away from an existing one, corporate total revenue grows even if the older store loses sales. This structure pushes the financial burden of market saturation and low foot traffic entirely onto the individual franchisee. The Chick-fil-A operating model is a structural inversion of Subway's approach. They use a high investment structure where initial capital expenditure exceeds $3 to $5 million. This funds standalone lots, multi-lane canopies, and high-volume kitchen lines requiring 30 to 50 team members per shift. Chick-fil-A corporate assumes the real estate risk by buying or leasing the land and building the facility. They align incentives with store profitability by taking a larger share of the net profits. Executing this high investment model requires a highly selective vetting process for operators, with an acceptance rate of less than 1%. A brand's unit economics are determined by who assumes the risk. Pushing risk outward creates cheap, sprawling networks, while centralizing risk allows for high-throughput precision. These underlying mechanics don't just apply to fast food. They apply equally to retail shelf space and fast-moving consumer goods distribution systems. Expanding into thousands of doors without underlying consumer pull leads directly into the expansion trap. First, distributing to thousands of stores requires heavy upfront inventory across multiple distribution centers, locking up working capital in slow-moving stock. Second, supporting a dispersed, low-volume network drives up freight, warehousing, and inventory carrying costs relative to total revenue. Finally, retail buyers evaluate items based on sales velocity. If a product moves slowly, retailers apply failure fees and eventually trigger the delisting cycle. The opposing strategy is the velocity engine. By optimizing door count and focusing on high sales per square foot, brands achieve rapid inventory turnover, clean cash conversion, and strong leverage for shelf positioning. Pushing physical distribution without proving sales velocity weaponizes a brand's own supply chain against its profit margins. This brings us to the physical limitations of high-velocity retail. A product's output ceiling is dictated by format-capacity alignment. A small strip mall counter location physically cannot process the volume of a massive dual-lane drive-through footprint. A primary threat to maximizing this capacity is menu and SKU bloat. Expanding product lines introduces operational friction. Historically, brands like Pizza Hut and Subway suffered from bloated menus that created ingredient waste and complex prep steps. Throughput leaders rely on tightly focused menus to shorten order times and reduce labor overhead. The rule is strict. Every additional operational step slows the line and decreases sales per square foot. Maximum revenue density requires absolute operational simplicity at every level. Remember, in this environment, operational complexity is the ultimate enemy of high-volume throughput. The data provides a framework for safely adding retail footprint. First, verify baseline organic sales velocity in a small sample of locations before scaling. Second, prioritize revenue density, sales per square foot, over total store count. Third, match inventory targets to the operational realities of the stores. Finally, prune operational complexity. Remove low-performing SKUs and operational bottlenecks to ensure consistent execution. Scale merely magnifies the existing operational system. If velocity is weak, expansion accelerates losses. Thanks for joining me on Global Signals. I'll see you in the next breakdown.